Thank you for joining us on our business breakfast at the London Met. We've got a few questions. Do you want to start by telling us about your background?
Yeah, sure. My background is I'm originally a chemist, so I qualified as a chemistry graduate. I was a teacher for a couple of years, and then I moved into forensic science, where I spent 20 happy years as an operational forensic scientist. And then I moved into project management, program management, and ended up doing a lot of international work, looking at projects with particularly the United States, Secret Service, and those sorts of things, as well as doing a lot of work in the Middle East. And then I had decided to have a career change, and I've moved into healthcare, where I've been for about the last 10 years.
Okay. You also studied for an MBA. Can you tell us how that helped with your career change?
Yeah, sure. I did my MBA in 1999, which does seem a long time ago now. And I was really interested in really looking at how to become a manager more professionally. And my line manager said, I think you ought to go and do something like do an MBA, because it will actually give you much more of a broader scope and also expansion for the future. So he saw that in me, and I was very keen. I'm a lifelong learner, yeah. And I did that part-time up in Manchester for 3 years and graduated in 2001.
Okay, and you think that's actually helped you with that career change and moving on to what you are now as like a CEO?
Absolutely pivotal. It's in terms of my career progression, I would say it is absolutely one of those game changers for me.
Okay.
I can expand on that,
yeah.
if that's helpful. I think I was being a scientist, and I like to be analytical, and doing the MBA, it gave me a much more rounded view of the world. The forensic science service who I was working with was becoming more of a moving out of a civil service type department and actually becoming fee earning. So there was a big transition which I became involved in once I got my MBA. And moving from a purely scientific and research orientated way of thinking, I actually got to see the more art side of learning, and a real introduction into the human dimensions of change, which wasn't necessarily my desired sweet spot at the time, but it opened my eyes to a whole different way of thinking, and that was absolutely pivotal for me.
Oh wow, excellent. And I remember when you was a key speaker at the university, Greenwich University, you talked about using models.
Yes.
Can you expand on that for the guys who are not there? Because you like to use lots of models, and obviously studying for an MBA, we do use models. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in terms of the work that we do, a lot of it is coaching and development of people. But sometimes when people ask me as CEO to roll my sleeves up and help in some organisational design, organisational development, a little bit more in the consulting zone. What I like to do is take different models and mix them and kick them about a bit in order to try and work out what does my client need, understand their needs, and then how can the models really fit best. I'm not necessarily a traditionalist, but some of the ones that I'm very happy to use, so people like Michael Porter, 5-force analysis, value chain, very, very established and standard, but boy, do they, in the right context, do they still work?
Yeah.
I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Mm-hmm. I like all the real modern side of things, and my interest is really about bringing the models and making them live. Right. That's my real passion about. Sometimes I work a lot with doctors and GPs and partners. They've gone to medical school. They can read MBA in a day and understand it. They have very good memories, very good retention. But actually making it live and understanding about business, that's the bit I really love to do with the models. So as a personal endeavour and interest, I just like to kick them around for their own sake. But the real application of them is really where my passion lies, about using them and engaging the right level of introduction to other business owners, but what do they need to know explicitly, because they don't necessarily want to do formal education learning about MBAs, but how can they actually utilise the tools to get the benefit that they want for their business in terms of either some outputs or outcomes.
Okay. Could you explain your actual business? Because I'm not sure whether the guys here actually know what you actually do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So Qualitas Consortium, we're an SME. We've got a small core team, and we have a number of associates who are about 25 people, so they're all independent. And what we do is our primary work is we are part of the Time for Care programme, so we're improvement experts, and we work with the NHS to go, we have our people go into individual practices, and we have a programme called PGP Quick Start, Productive General Practice. And what we do is our coaches go in and help practices to release time, quality improvement, and then really help to build the practices so they can get on an improvement journey, release time, and then become much more efficient. That's the main part of the work. The other side of the work that is more advanced is looking at how they can reorganise their own design and look at some of the more cultural, the softer elements inside. So we could say we're a consultancy, but we tend to live more in the coaching and facilitation zone.
Right, and how long does that normally take?
So one programme, there would be a cohort of say 8 to 12 practices all working together in a similar location, and that would be a 12-week intervention, and it would be half a day a week per practice, and with some group work as well. And so they'd have to our coaches have to have a real ability to form an immediate relationship. There's no time to spend half a day getting to know everybody. We have to this is where the human factors really comes through, and establish that relationship in the first session. By session 6, in the sixth half day, there's two sets of results that we expect the practices to have achieved, and it's their achievements, not ours. We do not do that in the consulting fashion.
Okay. Have you ever had a time when that didn't actually work, where the consultant actually went in but didn't actually create that sort of trust from the very beginning?
Yeah, that has happened once or twice. We've been in about 600 or 700 practices now, and so it's not always going to work all the time. And what we've been able to do when we've had some challenges is we've really had the operational centre to try and understand about what the reason is. So one example was that one of our coaches, it was going okay, but it was the only time it's all happened out of maybe say 5,000 or 6,000 sessions. She got the date wrong and didn't turn up. All of the partners were waiting, they backfilled time, and our person didn't turn up. So this is an absolute one-off. And the mitigation was, well, I'm in there now giving them a bit of extra work to try and help develop their organisation.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. I would like to open it up to the rest of the floor, so you don't obviously hear it from my voice all the time. If anybody else has any questions?
Just following on what Pat just asked, what happens when it's a toxic organization? So, right, your staff comes and does everything they're supposed to do, but just the organization top down, the culture in it is just bad.
Yeah, that is what we ask the coaches to do, is to try and find something tangible which they can work with. So a lot of the work is on the front line. So it would be the receptionist. If you go into your GP surgery, the receptionist or the administrators. We don't always get a lot of time with the doctors because they are too busy seeing patients, and that is one of the issues. They're working in the business rather than on the business. So if there's a level of toxicity at the top, what we try and do is we try and get some time with the partners, and what we try and do, we'll try and say, well, ask them what their values are. We'll try and pull it back from the actual day-to-day issues that they're dealing with, and we have GPs who can be, they can argue as much as anybody else can about their annual leave, all the normal things that happen in business, and is there. So we try and focus on something specific where we could get a tangible result, and we look at what are the values that the leaders have, the owners of the business, and we'll say, well, can we translate that into something that would be a tangible change, which would be of direct benefit for you? It was like really the win result. So in terms of what would be their personal win, as well as what would be a benefit to the organisation.
Do you find the practices receptive of your offering and help, or are they more push you away and don't find it as?
So the interesting thing is that we do something called pre-engagement, where we would invite them in, the practices or the cohort, to say, is this something that you're interested in? And rather than trying to sell it to them, we almost qualify them out, because for the practices, the programme is free. It's commissioned by the NHS. So because it's free to them, it's like it can be take it or leave it. It's weird. So there's something that we have to work through there, but they have to give time. They have to enable time. If one of our coaches turns up and there's nobody in the room, we're not going to be able to do anything. So we say to them, this is the time you have to give, and there's maybe some legacy where some NHS programs have been quite directive and not really aligned to the needs of the organisation. What we've done is we've totally changed that, and it's like, what are your needs, and we'll fit the program to work for you. So the scepticism of folded arms may start, and then in 10 weeks' time, when we come to the end, because we focus on tangible results that will really support them. At the end, we get very good feedback. The feedback has been 99% plus good or very good satisfaction. So as long as they see the program through, then that's good. If after a couple, we do get some dropouts, inevitably, some things can happen. And then sometimes, if it's not really for them, if they are really struggling, then sometimes they need to, if they've had lots of people leaving in important roles, our program isn't really going to work for them. But otherwise, if they can make some changes, then they normally will say there's a benefit to us and we'd like to carry on.
Is it a set program? Is it, the coach will go in and they follow a step, and every coach does the same steps, or is it tailored differently depending on the actual?
So the way the program runs is repeatable. So there's 4 group sessions, and then there's 6 half-day interventions with each of the practices. But it's a modular system. There's 8 modules, efficient processes, frequent attenders, appropriate appointments, some things specific for primary care. But the modular approach means that they can actually select their modules in a neatly packaged box, which originally was done by IDEO over in the States. So we got some designers in to help configure the tool. But people love the box, and we don't necessarily always use it. But the modular approach, there's say, for example, repeat prescriptions is quite a thorny secondary process. And then trying to unpick that and say, well, where are the issues in that? They would say, well, why don't we use this particular module? And if there's a lot of variation, we're trying to reduce some of that variation. We've got another module that would call common approach. It's a bit like gin and tonic. Efficient processes and common approach go quite well, because when we unpick some of the efficient processes, it can be there's human human focused as well as it could be just pure process. So that's where there's a real click, and there's a change when the people participants say, all right, this is for us. You're not dictating it to us. You're not going in and saying this is wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. We get them to understand it for themselves. Lots of skills transfer, lots of capability transfer, and the best thing we see is the jewels, the diamonds that arise in terms of real leadership potential, where some of the partners would never ever see this before. And it's amazing about that skill and capability that emerges irrespective of level. So, in terms of my views of things like leadership, it's not rank orientated and seniority. Yes, there are some specific areas where I think leadership is important for the business owners, but there's leadership capability and quality that can really come from people who are right in the mix.
So something that you mentioned when we met you was that MBA is lifelong learning.
Yes.
And so what do you recommend for us, or what is it that you do to continue with this learning? I know you talked about some older models and staying on top of the new, whatever is coming up now, and how you apply them, but any recommendations around that or best practice?
And what are you currently learning?
Yeah. So what I'm currently, I'm super interested in in looking at emotional intelligence and morphing that into business intelligence. And really think so Daniel Goldman, who's done some of these things, and I've read he's done some bits on business intelligence. That's what I'm really interested in, and looking at how to really get the human dimensions of change. So Patrick Lencioni's done some more recent work where he did the 5 dysfunctions of teams. So very good on a personal level, and my wife thinks it's a great thing for us to make sure that I don't step out of line too much. But also in a professional sense, utilising some of those models that are straightforward. And there's one which he talks about the health of the organisation, as opposed to all of the technical elements, the financial, the HR, and all those sort of MBA standards, but actually looking at trying to depoliticise an organisation. So what does an organisation, particularly in SMEs, if it is politicised, what are causing that? So Pat's the GP, I'm an administrator, I've known Pat for 20 years. I want to reorganise my annual leave, I'll go straight to Pat rather than somebody who ought to be doing it. and perhaps allowing that to happen, that creates like a micro-political environment. They're the things I'm really interested in trying to develop and really work when things get really tough. So in terms of looking at how do we create sets of values. So again, in the same type of modules, the core values about what people talk about, care, innovation, in terms of values, are they real? You know, these are the things that I try and use with my models. Are they real? So looking at, root cause analysis. So I try and do it all the time. I'm queuing in Costas, I'm looking at the process flow. These models, I use them all the time. They're hardwired in, and I try and look for the blend of traditional all over. When I'm reading some of the journals like Harvard Business Review and all those sorts of things, try and unpick and say, well, does that really fit? And try and look with some of the other models as well. And it's something that I keep on developing. And the people who I graduated with my MBA, I keep in contact with them as well. Because I think the other part that I got most was, there was somebody who was working in the newspaper industry, which was having a real tough time, somebody who was working in social care, somebody's working in marketing. And what we did over the time was share our own environments, of our own working environments, or where we've done, and continue to do that. Do not let that go, because it's so valuable. You know each other's areas of interest, you know how we start to get to know how each other thinks. I would try and maintain that as long as possible, because I think that's a great way, because I still speak with my friend and who's in newspapers, he's in Oman now, and he still knows exactly how we think. So when we meet up or we Skype, we'll just have those sorts of conversations, and then just say, oh, what are you reading now? What's coming up next? And just keep that freshness and doing this, and and talking and giving up time and having this opportunity and being able to field questions and think about it.
That's a very interesting. I feel like right now we're in the taking it in, writing assessments, doing all these things, but just to switch on to this application, you're constantly looking at things and applying it, and I'm like, learned about the 5 forces, next theory. So very interesting way to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at things like 5 forces and say looking at core competence, the sort of tension between those two, and looking at say reading Lex on the Financial Times or something, like thinking, okay, if I was to apply that in my modelling, what's really going on? And where there's organisations that are doing particularly well or struggling, or emerging industries, how are those models fitting? So if you've got something like cybersecurity, and we've just had a very brief chat, I don't know an awful lot about it, but if somebody was to explain it with me, I'd be thinking, which models would I be applying to those? And how's it work? And then rather than go, oh well, how does 5 forces fit in a conversation? Just say, so what? Tell me about the dynamics. Who else is in that industry mix? How easy is it to get into it? Exit. What's changing? So that's all context.
When I think of traditional change projects, I think of them being 12, 24, 36 months. It sounds like you've kind of codified a way to make quite significant change in a relatively short space of time.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned elements of like Qualitas model around the envisioning and the change champions and the impetus to change, all those types of things. You've brought in the dysfunctions of a team. I love that pyramid. It sounds like you've kind of cherry-picked certain things, and then through your 600 to 700 engagements kind of refined it to a point where you've got a reasonably discrete, repeatable process, which would be fascinating just to understand. So what are some of those elements? Can you build a little bit more on the approach that you take and some of the things that people are doing in these group workshops and individual interventions, as you call them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's exactly what we do. So a few years ago when we started doing this work, we did a great big piece of work in the United States. I was helping to help a health plan put in Obamacare, and that was specifically me. And one of our client was saying, you come and do this work, and you come and you get everybody in, and all this stuff happens. Codify it for me because I want to know. So what we had to do, and my colleague Phil, he just does it. He changes audiences, and he reads the room. His EI is super sharp, and I couldn't, and mine not so much. It's a work in progress for me. I'm too analytical. But what we saw was he changed the dynamics of the audience. So we had to try and unpick it and work out what was going on, and that's when I started bringing the models in. So what we do is I do a lot of observation. I'll sit in the room, And there's a number of cues where we've seen things work really well. So we've got 25 coaches, lots and lots of examples, and we bring those in, and I try and understand what's happening. So in terms of, so we think within Consortium about, you know, getting that level of engagement. So one thing that we ask coaches to say is when everybody's there, so there'd be one representation from each of the 8 to 10 individual practices. We say, right, you're going to go away from this with the bright shiny badge of I've done PGP Quick Start. Well, how's that going to go in your organisation? We want everybody to have that bright shiny badge because it's fabulous. It is fabulous. So think very hard, and it's not about community. We say my better eyes like the word communication. Communication is an active interaction, in my view. How are you going to involve everybody else at this early stage? Because sustainability starts at pre-engagement. Sustainability doesn't start at the celebration event. Too late then. So how do we start to build in that sustainability? And the cues are very subtle. So what we do is we do a lot of observation, and we try and get as much information back from our coaches and say what is working well, and how can we actually and why is that? So root cause analysis is normally done on things that have gone wrong. We turn it the way around and try and say, why has this gone so well, and how can we really build on it? And we get our coaches to share amongst themselves about the really great things that they've been doing. But in terms of the codification, there are some other people who enjoy doing what I do, so I need somebody else to balance. We've got one, we're looking to bring more people in as well, to actually really understand about what is going and what else could we bring in, and we don't stand still. So what we were doing two years ago has really has changed quite a lot. Having a few runs on the board is really helpful. We can bring in lots of examples now, where people will say, well, is this really for us? It's not so experimental. So looking at the is it more with the innovators, the early adopters, and all that sort of thing. So crossing the chasm, yeah, and it's the chasm. It's not about the individual, that what's inside the block, which is a lot of focus on. It's actually how do we manage the gap? That's what his book's really all about. So we're trying to say to our coaches, when we're getting people who are a little sceptical, how can we really get them to actually cross and say, this is where we want. We really want to get a level of movement and momentum. And then the other parts we will do is say, do you know what, I think I could put you in touch with somebody who's in the northwest of England, because they're doing great work like you. It's not necessarily in your, because it's very localised, not in your local patch will you be able to see people who are interested in what you're doing. It may be a little bit further away. So the leverage of the expanse that we've done, we're not saying, oh, we've been in lots of places, great, we've got lots of examples. What we're trying to do is maybe do a bit of extra and get people who are thinking in the same way, or somebody's got a bit more advanced thinking, getting them together.
Okay, and I saw some of the results from your time to care. So some of the GPs were having up to 2 hours free per day.
Per day.
I think some of the administrators over the space of the year were freeing up something like 700 hours or something of administration work. So the significance in such a short program, 12 weeks, is amazing, is incredible.
It's fabulous, yeah. And it's down to the organisations. Our coaches enable, but it's down to the organisations. That's the emphasis. So the celebration events, it's showcase your work. So World Cafe, you know, in terms of like looking at sharing. So this is where we start to, we use the theory. We called it World Safari. Okay, and the reason when we first did this, we were at London Zoo because we're in West London, so that's why we called it World Safari. And we've got some videos, and we say this is how we like to do it. So rather than everybody standing up and it's death by PowerPoint, we did this in our posters. We'll go, let's go around, let's share the ideas. You know, and so we've modified it, and we just keep saying, how's it working well? What's the nuance? It's very, I think it's very nuanced in the end, because there's a lot of smart people in the room, and looking and saying, this is what people have saved, what we're going to do with it now. And if it means a GP having a 14-hour day rather than a 16-hour day, and this is their world, do that then. See kids, you know, what is that? What is the, when you've got off that hamster wheel and you can actually start to look at your own environment, when you release that time, what are you going to do with it? And that's what we really ask them to do. And when we start to get a little bit of momentum, and because that's very short with us, when we're finished, how can the organisations themselves start to build that, keep that momentum going and maintain? So yeah, it's fabulous, and this is why I love every minute of what I do. And I've said this, but I love every single second of it, because it makes a difference to all of us. I was at a conference recently, and one of the a healthcare professional said, we look for the person inside the patient. And that really resonated with me, and I thought, this is what we are doing. We're enabling more time, so the healthcare professionals who are really pushed, they see beyond the diagnostic side of things. And I think if we can help and contribute to some way in that, then I go to sleep on a Friday night a very happy person after a long week. So.
Thank you. Any more questions?
So when it comes to the coaches, you mentioned you have 25. How do you go about selecting a coach? What kind of background do they come from? Your training process for them, what's that like?
So they have to have a experience in quality improvement. So it's sort of like lean-based type of things, and we don't necessarily go for there's black belts, there's Six Sigma, and all those sorts of like lean improvement based. What we look for, and so the two people I would recommend, I'm keeping this related back, Drucker and Collins. Right people on the bus, in the right seats, and a lot of time the capability's there, but it's the human element. It's do they have the right level of relationship capabilities to build up quickly in order to make a difference in that environment? The work is not that technical. So I think there's I sense an overemphasis on capability to the detriment of actually being able to develop and formulate that human relationship. So we have conversations with people, and we just see that we're thinking, how would they go if they're in this environment where we're going into somebody else's business? So in pre-engagement, I would say, I feel privileged that we've been invited into your business, and it's quite humbling and it's quite an honour. And if I make that pledge as CEO of my organisation, I want that value to be absolutely in the coaches. And they are independent, so they do have a fair amount of flexibility, but do they have that core desire to say, I'm here to make a difference for you and your business? We're not ego-driven, so at the top of the Lencioni, it's like it's results orientation. We've got trust and commitment and the accountability, and we hold that accountability. So it's that quality that we look for in terms of being able to say, could that person go into that environment and flourish? And at the end of it, that practice, the organisation, has got a significant set of benefits from our intervention. So I'd look at a CV, go, great, okay, tick, 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 great, let's meet. That's very much our approach. And sometimes if people have got the right they've got the right mindset, and what I mean by mindset is the willingness to actually to develop those human relationships with people who they don't necessarily know, then some of the sort of tool-based learning can actually happen, and in my views, is more transactional. Now, some people who are skilled at doing both, they are, they're our top shelf people, and what we're trying to do is to say, what's the magic asset-based change, that sort of positive deviance type of thing? What are those people doing so differently, which gives them consistently fabulous results? How can we replicate those? So we get all of our coaches together and we have a bit of fun, it's all nice and relaxed. What we do is we have some sessions where we really focus on what are the key differentiators. What's it that you did something differently which really, really resonated? And it's not tools, it's not tasks. We put the tasks down, and it's all about what made the nature of that relationship really work.
So, where do you envisage your business going into? Are there any other key organizations that you could actually, like, for instance, you are in the health sector, how about the education sector? Have you thought about expanding into that? And if so, how would you try and do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of our business, now I guess we have to do this because this is when I put my consulting roll my sleeves up, is about, so we have our retreats, we have our business planning cycle. So what we're looking to do is got some moderate growth, so using the SME growth model. So that's where we have, where we're looking to grow. So we're looking to grow. We've done a lot of work in secondary care, so hospital care, social care as well. So a lot of work in care homes. So we're in the health and social care field, because integrated care is a big thing. The long-term plan that's come out, for the NHS is a real big deal, and it's quite well formulated now. So we could fill our boots really with a lot of that work. Outside of that, there's a lot of pull for people who are looking in different sectors where quality improvement is little underutilised. Education is certainly one area where I've not observed a lot of drive to say we want to look at efficiency within our own organisation and start then to enable time to be spent on looking at the level of effectiveness that we do. So I think there has to be a realisation that this is something that is helpful for us. I was with and a lot of professional services, because looking at lawyers and accountants, the senior partners, they're working in the business still a lot. So it's exactly the same sort of concept as trying to say come out of the transactional work that you're doing and saying, how are we managing ourselves as a business? And then trying to get the right drivers, because I think because there's a level of fairly good margin that legal and accountants have, to actually say, well, why do we need improvement is really the challenging question. And when they do see it, they go, now I understand it's not just about cost saving, it's actually about adding value and retention of staff and giving people a productive environment at work where they are feeling that they are really contributing to the health of the business. So there's some of the other areas that we're looking to pursue.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time. It's 1:45. Have we got any other questions for Steve? No? Okay. Thank you, Steve, very much for attending our business breakfast this morning.
Thank you.
Very informative. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay.